I read an article the other day that said that Americans work 25% more than their counterparts in Europe. And I wasn't surprised by this at all, because workers in Europe have many more protections than Americans do. American companies have always basically had the freedom, with exceptions here and there, to operate under a doctrine known as employment at will, and that's something that I really need to talk about sometime. But what employment at will basically means is that people can lose their jobs for any reason, no reason, or even a bad reason. And the reason people get so confused about that is various laws that have come in on the books over the years. Is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which deals with discrimination, and the OSHA law, which deals with occupational safety, and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which deals with disabilities, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, and a number of exceptions that have been written into federal law. And there have been exceptions that have found their way into state law because of court decisions, but that varies from state to state. But in the main, American workers have far less protection than their European counterparts. And the title of this article was called American Hustle, and it talks about how Americans are just working all the time. They work longer hours, they take fewer vacations. A lot of times people don't take all of their vacation time, and that Americans just work a lot more than other people do. And that's probably true. And it raises the question, why are Americans so obsessed with work? Are people truly that addicted to their work? Well, some people are, and I'll get to that in a minute, but a lot of people are not. A lot of times people in the United States work long hours, and they skip vacation time, and they don't take all the benefits to which they're entitled to take, and they go to work sick and do similar things because they're under immense pressure at work. I've seen data indicating that as many as 81% of American workers have been out looking for work, hoping to find another job because they're not satisfied where they are. And the pressure with a lot of jobs can just be tremendous. And I'll never forget, I was working in the healthcare sector a while back, and it was just a horrible environment. I found myself overcompensating in all kind of ways to make up for the never-ending pressure that I was under at work. You know, just to get a little bit of peace of mind, I would overcompensate. I gained 18 pounds. I would eat too much. I'd go to the movies every week. I'd go to the store and buy lots of Dos Equis, every kind of way. I couldn't do anything about the work situation that existed at that place, but I was constantly trying to overcompensate. And so I wasn't exercising at the time, so I gained a lot of weight. And I wish we had better ways of dealing with work pressure in the United States. Unfortunately, what people have to do is either learn to live with their situation or look for better opportunities. And a lot of people do spend their entire careers, their entire working lives, looking for better opportunities because of the immense pressure that they are under. I wish we had a solution to that work pressure. The fact that people go to work and it's almost like going to war because they're in competition, and there's all this blame shifting, and people benefit from undercutting other people and placing blame, and the backstabbing and the politics and all that usually goes on in so many American workplaces. Wish there was a solution to that. Don't see it coming anytime soon because our political situation is an absolute disaster. So that's one category of people. Millions of Americans who work extra long hours and don't take all their vacation time just because they're under immense pressure at work. Not to advance themselves necessarily, but just to hang on to the work they've got. They have to deal with immense pressure. But there's another group that I'd like to talk about, and that is people that are so addicted to their work that their whole identity is built around their work, and they can't stand to leave it. And they work these awful, sometimes grueling jobs, but they can't stay away on their vacation. They are reluctant to retire. They're afraid that if they retire, they're going to die. And some of them can't stand the thought of taking long vacations. And some people, when they do on vacation, they feel the need to constantly stay in touch with the job. And I myself wonder why people are so addicted to work in that fashion. I worked in the telecommunications business once years ago, and the manager of my department had retired from the telephone company, so he came to take this grueling job with this other telecommunications company just because he wanted something to do. And I can't imagine doing that because his job was a grueling, demanding job, and I saw other people do the same thing who were retired from other companies, and they couldn't stand being home. They couldn't stand having all this free time. I know another gentleman who retired from the steel business in 2001. He's done fine. He's enjoyed his life a lot better since retirement. But it's kind of ridiculous to me the way people are so, their identity is so wrapped up with their work that they leave their work for whatever reason. They acquire enough money, or they retire, or they get disabled or something, and then they don't know what to do with themselves. And some people are afraid to retire because they don't know what they're going to do. And I just can't imagine that. You know, there are so many things in this world that I would like to do that I've never had the opportunity to do. How many things have you done? How many places have you been? It's a big, big world out there. There are always new adventures waiting. There are always new hobbies that people could get into. So I don't know why people have to be so absorbed with their work that they can't stand to leave it even when they have the opportunity to leave it. You know, I would much rather travel to places that I had not been and experience some of the local culture, the way things are there, than I had to remain in a grueling job that I hated years for years and was afraid to leave because I didn't know what to do with myself. There are endless opportunities to spend your time in this world. And I think, you know, if I wasn't working, I'd like to go to Las Vegas and maybe get in the World Series of poker. I would like to travel to, I've never been to New York City. I'd like to travel there and experience some of that local culture. There are so many things you could do there. I've never been to Boston. That's a place I'd like to visit. Never been to Philadelphia. That's a place I'd like to visit. And just like Anthony Bourdain, you know, just go take in the local culture. And you could spend practically forever doing that. There are so many opportunities in this world that I don't understand why people are addicted to this grueling work that they've done for 30 or 40 years. Because when your circumstance changes so that you do have time on your hands and you don't have to worry a lot about where your income is going to come from, it opens up a vast world of opportunities. And I can't see how anybody could get bored when there are so many places to go, there's so many things to do. I was talking to a relative about this office where she works, and he works for an insurance agency, and there's this insurance agency owner who's been old enough to retire for a long time, but he's afraid to retire because he's afraid he won't know what to do with himself. He won't know what to do. And the man has got money. He's well off. He lives in a rich neighborhood. He could go to all kind of places, do all kind of things that he'd never done before. And there's this other woman who works in the office that she's probably in her early 70s right now and can't even think about retiring. I think she lives home alone. I think she's been a widow for like 30 years or something like that. But she's afraid to stop working. When she goes on vacation, she checks by the office. And I'm thinking, why aren't you out there having some fun with your life? Why aren't you going to the beach for a week or something like that? Why have you got to be so tied to that office that, especially at your age, you can't even take a vacation? That's ridiculous. There are endless opportunities in this world, and you have to just open your mind to experiencing new things. Is that what it is? Is that what people are so afraid of? They don't want to experience new things? Now, I saw this show a while back, Better Late Than Never, and it was this group of guys that went over to Asia, and they experienced some of that culture for the first time. And I got to tell you, I'm not much of an Asia person. I knew that I wasn't. When I saw that show, that really confirmed it, because there are just so many issues that I just wouldn't like at all over there. And one of them includes the cuisine, which to me just sounds completely disgusting and horrible. And then in a country like Japan, there is the height issue, where a person like me, I'm about 5'10", but I'd be very tall in Japan because the doors are so tight that you can't even get in them if you're above a certain height sometimes. And there's the issue that, like in Tokyo, none of the streets, as a matter of fact, most of the roads in Japan don't have any names, so I don't know how people find their way around. I don't know how they get around. There is a chronic paper shortage in Japan, and that could make things really inconvenient in a lot of ways. And it's extremely crowded in Japan, a lot of areas in Tokyo. And then when you get to Korea and China, the cuisine is always a horrible issue in my book. And then there's the issue of these capsule hotels, where basically it's like a space about as small as a casket, and that's your bed for the night. And I guess they're arranged in sort of this dormitory-like fashion, where you have these little tubes that people use. That's where they spend their night. And so I'm not really an Asia person, but still, the opportunity to travel to different places. I've never been to London. I've never been to Edinburgh. Never been to Scotland. I'd really like to go there. I'd like to visit Italy. I'd like to cruise the Mediterranean. And I'd like to spend some time in the Caribbean. I'd like to go down to the Bahamas. And as I've already indicated, there are a lot of areas on the East Coast that I'm only vaguely familiar with. When I was very young, I spent some vacation time, several different years, at a place called Jekyll Island, Georgia, on the East Coast, and that's most of my East Coast experience. But they're attending professional sports, going to the Olympics, going to the World Series, playing in the World Series of poker, maybe learning how to drive a race car. Now, I love flying planes. I'm not going to jump out of them or anything like that, but if you have time on your hands, you get to a situation in your life where you've got time on your hands, there's so many things you could do. Go learn how to jump out of planes. I'm not going to do that. Learn how to fly them. Now, that's a good thing. There's no age limit as long as you meet the requirements. There's no age limit per se for learning to fly planes, not that I know of. Anyway, so that's a great thing to learn how to do. Have you ever considered learning how to snow ski? What about water ski? I've never done that. Well, the only time I ever tried, I fell and got dragged halfway across a lake. Why don't you try some new sports like archery? Why don't you go to concerts? Why don't you listen to music? Why don't you try different kinds of cuisine? Why don't you go experience the culture of, in the United States, the East Coast, and then, well, there's not much to experience in the South, in my opinion, except for the coastal areas, New Orleans, everything like that. But if you've never been to the Great American West, it's just a beautiful place, and there are a lot of things to do, and you can just go enjoy the scenery. So I've never understood, I don't understand to this day, why people are so addicted to these grueling jobs that they've had years and years and years, that when suddenly that goes away, they don't know what to do with themselves, and they're bored to death. Why are you bored to death? There are so many opportunities, there's so many things in this world, and I think what you have to do is just open up your mind to new experiences. You're never too old to stop learning. I think if I ever get to, because I'm a very curious person, not curious strange, just inquire a lot. I love knowledge. And if I ever get to the point where there's nothing new to learn, then I think I'd be bored. But right now I'm trying to teach myself piano. And I didn't start that until like a couple of years ago. Because you're not too old to try new things. I've never been good at chess. I'd like to learn to get good at that. So I downloaded a free game on my computer the other day. And if I ever get really good at piano, I may want to take up guitar. And, who knows, I might want to get in a rock band, or I might want to play in a symphony orchestra. There are just so many possibilities. You're as old as you feel as far as new experiences go. So, if you're getting to a point where you're going to reach retirement, or for some other, your work situation changes so that you've got more control and you've got more time available to you, or you just go on vacation to get away from your job, there's no reason to be bored out of your mind. There's plenty to do. It's a big world out there. If you've never travel to another country, hell, go buy a ticket to Cairo or somewhere and go find out what that's all about. And then when you get done with the Middle East, assuming you survive over there, you can go tour Europe. If somebody really wanted to and they're good enough health, I guess they could go try to climb Mount Everest. Parasailing, snow skiing, learning how to drive race boats. What about horse racing? Why not invest in a racehorse or something like that? Why not develop some new skills? And the mind has a human capacity to learn. We don't have to get to a point where we stop developing new skills. And as a matter of fact, keeping the mind active has a lot to do with avoiding things like Alzheimer's and things like that. And personally, my mind is just so active that I can't imagine ever getting bored out of my mind. Now, my working days aren't anywhere near complete, so that issue of time is not something that I'm worried about yet. But if you ever get to the point where you have the means and you have the opportunity, go out and experience some of the world, because there's a lot out there. There really is. You don't have to be bored out of your mind. You don't have to be so addicted to your job that it goes away for some reason, and then you don't know what to do with yourself. That's ridiculous. There's a world full of opportunity if you got the means. So like Anthony Bourdain would say, go experience some of it. There's, if you ever get to the point where you've got the time available, there's a world to explore. There's a whole life to live out there. So get busy and do it, because if your experience has been limited, there are all kinds of pleasures and fantastic experiences just waiting to be had out there. So don't be so addicted to that job that it goes away or your circumstances change and then you don't know what to do with yourself, because there's plenty to do. I promise you that. You think about that.